What it do, baby? It's your boy, Derek Demure, spinning the block media, say, back with another video. Hey, man, I know it's been a minute, you know what I'm saying? But the key this year, the key word this year is going to be consistency, man. Say, we're going to be consistent. Not only on social media, but in our daily life too. You know what I'm talking about? And I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about you too. You feel me? So yeah, man, the key word for 2026 is consistency, man. Let's make sure we stay consistent across the board. You feel me? In our first video of the year that we're about to get into, man, the judge was very consistent on the sentencing that she was handing down to these two young men that killed 20-year-old Tatyanna Zech. First up is Mr. Parise Larry, and second is Mr. Antonio Johnston. Now, they were arrested in Wisconsin for the killing of Tatyanna Zech. As you'll be able to see in this video, the judge wasn't playing. I can say Mr. Johnston seemed to articulate himself well, although he was rather repetitive. So I broke it down. I broke the video down. Well, I'm not going to just play all of what he had to say because, like I said, he was very repetitive. However, Mr. Larry wasn't as articulate, right? I feel like in his statement, the judge probably looked at him as just a uneducated thug who would not be a productive member of society if given a second chance. However, I felt like in Mr. Johnston's case, I thought the way he articulated himself, the judge probably would consider giving him a second chance, but nope, she put the blame down on him too. She brought the hammer down on him too. Both received life without parole. So after the video, man, y'all watch it, leave a comment. Do you think they deserved a second chance, or do you think, the judge was correct in her sentences, in her sentencing? And, I'm going to come back and give you my point of view.
Now is your opportunity. Just try to use that microphone so we can hear you, okay?
Yeah. I want to start off by saying I'm sorry to the victims, family, and the cause of their death of their family member. I'm sorry for all my actions that took in this place and in this courtroom. I don't really know what to say. I done lost a lot of my family members in crossfire, so I know how I feel, and I'm going to take responsibility for everything that's in this case. And I just want to say sorry to my family and to their family. Hope everybody could forgive me or what my actions took. And that's it.
It's a plethora of some of the most serious charges anyone could be facing. Not only did people die, or a person died, multiple people were injured, multiple people were put at risk of losing their life or otherwise being seriously injured. Attorney Tony referenced, I think for the first time today, I don't believe there was a reference to it other than in passing or if anyone was paying attention to the video that was played. The little boy, don't know how old he is, looks maybe 5 or 6, takes his little scooter, he's just out, looks like having a good time. As he's riding that scooter, he rides it directly under the shooting from Mr. Johnston and Mr. Larry. There's a lot of talk, and I'll circle back to this as it relates to Mr. Larry, of people becoming products of their environment. That little boy should not have to grow up thinking that type of behavior, that risk, these circumstances are in any way, shape, or form normal, because they're not. There aren't any charges as it relates to that little boy. I bring it up because it shows the seriousness of what took place here. It also shows quite clearly the concern for public safety that accompanies these charges that this court has. So when it comes to gravity of the offense, It can't get more grave than that. Now, looking at the character of Mr. Larry, he's very young. I cannot deny that. 14, I believe, when these circumstances took place. He does not have any criminal history. He does not have any juvenile history. I think there were some references to some citations, getting in some trouble at school, but nothing else that would show a pattern of this type of behavior. While that history is lacking, what's not is some of the evidence of behavior that he engaged in prior to the circumstances of May 7th. There was reference to, in the PSI, I think Attorney Tony hit on some of that today during the trial and the reverse waiver hearing. Mr. Larry had a significant number of concerning social media posts. Posts that involved a large amount of guns, some with extended magazines. The video that was played, that live feed, as I've already referenced, you hear him make threats to Mr. Johnson, and you hear him talk about going pipe for pipe. Mr. Larry had these engagements trying, it appeared, to provoke some type of altercation with Mr. Johnson. He has these videos, these posts, in an attempt apparently either to brag to his friends. Again, it can be a sign of youth and stupidity. But it also shows that the circumstances of May 5th did not erupt of their own accord. It's unclear to me whether he has been able to fully digest these circumstances such that he could show true remorse at this point in time. But I heard his statements today. He's indicating that he's remorseful. He's made an apology. I will leave it up to those in the courtroom who feel it necessary to have that validation, to interpret it as they will. I will take his words at their meaning and him at his word as he sits here today. These types of circumstances give the court cause for public safety. I think the issue is looking at a sentence, whether or not in the future we're able to address any rehabilitative needs for Mr. Larry such that that can quell the court's concern for public safety. Is this going to happen again? Is he going to harm anyone else? It's always easier said if hindsight's 2020. I don't know that as I sit here today. What I know is he is a young man who engaged in very risky behavior, who engaged in behavior that took the life of another individual and seriously injured multiple other individuals. And since that time, I would say it is concerning as well, the information that this was listed in the PSI that the state pointed out, that he's continuing to engage in assaultive type behavior. All right, I'm going to start diving in as it relates to the court sentence. And as to count 9, the court is going to order life imprisonment without the possibility of extended supervision. And that will run the other counts that the court identified consecutive to each other. All of them will run concurrent to count 9. Mr. Johnston, and as your attorney apparently talked through with you, you don't have to make a statement, but if you wish to do so, now is your opportunity to let me know anything else that you'd like me to consider before I impose sentence today.
To speak now?
Now is that opportunity, yes. Just try to, if we could, make sure you try to use that microphone so I can hear you. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. First, I just want to say thank you, Your Honorable Judge Levy, for allowing me to address the court on my behalf. And as you may see, my family is not here in person to give a verbal statement on my behalf, but I just want to say first, I want to give my deepest and sincere condolences to the entire Zech family or anybody else that has been harmed, and that includes friends, family, distant friends, everyone who has been harmed in any type of way, shape, or form by this tragedy that occurred on May 7, 2023. I am so very sorry. I never intended to harm Tatyanna Zech, and I'm so sorry that she has lost her life. I know that I have never met her, but from what I have read from the victim's mother and sister and friends, that she was a wonderful person, that she, as was earlier stated, that she was a wonderful hairstylist and she was a very heartfelt person. I just want to give my deepest condolences to the entire Zech family. I am so very sorry that my actions led to Tatyana losing her life. I also would like to state that I am very sorry to the Fond du Lac community for acting so recklessly and not thinking. Me being 17 years old, I have been through trials and tribulations in my life, and I have been put in situations where I had to think, and that situation that occurred on May 7th was one of those situations that I should have thought and proceeded with my day, but my actions showed otherwise, and that is why I'm here in front of you today, Your Honorable Judge Levy. I really want you to take into consideration that I've entered those guilty pleas. I have took the stand against my co-defendant. I admitted my guilt, and I am so very sorry to the community and to the entire Zech family and anybody else who has been affected by this tragedy. They're not the only ones that have been affected. My life has been affected. Parise Larry life has been affected. Also his family and mine.
You can take a moment. You have the floor until you tell me you're done.
I'm sorry. I'm not here in front of you with a piece of paper that everything could be fabricated about. I am speaking genuinely from the heart, and I understand that you have a job to do today. I just hope that you could be lenient enough and allow me to be released at or after the 20-year mark. I know you don't have any obligations to do so, but I really assure you that the time being spent in the Fond du Lac County Jail and my future would be in any prison or maximum facility, that I will be well rehabilitated and that I will grow as a man, and I am learning and I have learned from my mistakes. I want to end by saying this. I want to thank you again, Your Honorable Judge Levy, for allowing me to address the court on my behalf and giving my deepest condolences to the entire Zech family and everybody else who has been affected. And I am so very sorry. Thank you, Your Honor, for allowing me to address the court on my behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. I'm not aware of that prior history as it relates to Mr. Johnston. However, there are separate aggravating circumstances that the court takes into consideration as it relates to Mr. Johnston's involvement in these circumstances. One, he pulled that firearm first. He had it down at his side. He's the one who fired first. He fired 10 rounds to Mr. Larry's 3, to Mr. Johnson's 1. Certainly those are more aggravating circumstances than what Mr. Larry did, what Mr. Johnston did even. He then fled on foot, took off with Mr. Larry and another individual, dropped the gun in the garbage can by Tyson Middle School, and fled the state. You have Mr. Johnston standing outside the doorway. He raises his arm to shoot at the group of individuals. You have Mr. Larry shooting from the doorway. There's other people that are in the parking lot. There's people in the apartments across the way. And then you have this little 5-6-year-old boy that scoots by on his scooter right underneath the fire, the gunfire. Whether by virtue of sheer dumb luck or the grace of God, that little boy wasn't harmed. But I point that out because it is a clear, tangible circumstance that shows how dangerous these circumstances were. And that factors into the court's consideration of not only the public safety as it relates to this crime, but I also need to look at public safety in the future. And that dovetails into looking at the character of Mr. Johnston as to whether, based on the sentence structure put in place, based on the opportunities that may or may not be made available to him, that will he take advantage of them? Is he going to put others at risk in the future? Clearly, the behavior that happened here, the circumstances here, put many people at risk. Far more people than charges were brought in this case, because there was no charge associated with that little boy. And the people that suffered direct injuries or were part of that group taking out the garbage were not made identified victims in this case, but certainly were put at risk by the behavior and the actions of Mr. Johnston. In looking at the character of Mr. Johnston, I'll start by acknowledging that he too is incredibly young. 17 at the time, 19 now. He has not, I believe, have any prior criminal history, no prior juvenile history. Certainly that speaks to his favor. What doesn't are the conduct reports that Attorney Tony had referenced that are referenced in the PSI. Some of those do give the court concern as they reference a continued assaultive type behavior. This isn't just failing to follow the rules of the jail and you're getting written up. One references that he was throwing fist strikes with a closed fist to the other inmate's face and head area, continued fighting the other person at least 12 times. That was from circumstances in September of last year. Then from February of this year, getting into a fight again, striking another inmate at least 11 times with a closed fist. It states he then dragged them under the staircase and again attacked them, hitting in the head with a closed fist at least 5 times. Another reference from May 12th of this year. What started, it seems, as exchanging words, it says, with another inmate. It says he then struck the other inmate in the head with a closed fist. Now, I recognize the circumstances that Attorney Singh pointed out, and that is fair argument for the court to consider. But certainly what's before the court is very violent, assaultive type crimes, and I'm looking at how one conducts themselves so that I can have an understanding, as best I can glean, as to how they will take advantage of opportunities made available to them, how they will utilize their time in confinement, and whether or not that type of behavior is going to continue into the future. And so certainly looking at those circumstances does give the court some concern. that factors all of those things into account. As it relates to count 1, the court is going to order life imprisonment without the possibility of extended supervision. I recognize that that is not what the state is requesting. I recognize it is not what the defense is requesting.
All right, so like I said, yeah, man, let me know what y'all think in the comments, you feel me? Do you think the judge was correct in her sentencing, or do you think these two men deserved a second chance? As far as I stand, I'm going to say I can see both sides, right? I can see where the judge was correct in her sentencing, and I could also see where they possibly could have deserved a second chance. And I'm going to give you both scenarios, so we're going to break it down, right? As far as the judge and her sentencing, this young lady lost her life at 20 years old. So she'll never be able to experience age past that, right? Her life just stopped completely. It was over at 20 years old. These guys committed the crime. Mr. Larry was 14. Mr. Johnston was, I believe, 16 or 17 at the time. Their life basically ended then too, because they've been locked up since then, right? So I think the judge basically said, hey, a life for a life, or 2 for 1 in actuality. Even though Mr. Johnston flipped trying to get a lesser sentence by, turning the state on Mr. Larry. That didn't work out too well for him. As you can see, the judge didn't sympathize with that. Said you were part of this crime too. You articulated yourself well. That don't mean anything, bro. As you can see. So yeah, I can see the judge's point of view. Like, this young lady, her life was ended abruptly at 20 years old. So she felt like neither one of those guys deserved to be, in the free world. They was going to live the rest of their life behind bars. And that's the only thing that they'll know from 14 and 16 or 17 on through life, however long they are allowed to live. You know what I mean? I could also see the other end of this, to where everybody deserves a second chance, though, right? Or, do they? Me personally, I think it depends on the crime. You took this girl's life at 20 years old. Her family won't be able to experience her growing old, her having grandkids. I don't know if she had any kids or not. You know what I'm saying? Her having a family, getting married, woo-de-woo, wah-de-wah, everything like that. So why should they? And then you can say, well, they were young, 14 years old, 16 years old. Brains wasn't fully developed. But hey, a lot of youngsters think because they're young, they can do the crime, go in, do 10, 15, 20 years, come out and lead a normal life, right? And that's what a lot of these old heads who be getting these youngsters to do these crimes be banking on. I'm going to send my young boy at him because I know my young boy ain't going to get the amount of time that I get. Well, that's not so. They keep them locked up in TYC, Texas Youth Commission, Texas Youth Detention Centers, until they turn of legal age, and then they try them as adults. And then they give them all this time. Not saying that was the scenario in this case, because, they acted alone. They acted on their own. So, but what did happen was they've been in a youth facility until they turned of age, were tried as adults, and ended up with life sentences without the possibility of parole. So all they gonna know is whatever goes on behind those bars or what they see on TV. They'll never be able to experience life on the other side of that gate, man. Never in the free world again. So that's something that the youngsters need to think about. Yeah, most people deserve a second chance, but hey, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, a life for a life, man. Y'all took this young lady's life, and I'm not sure that I was feeling genuine remorse or not. You know what I mean? I don't know if they were genuinely sorry. Like I said, genuinely sorry, excuse me. Like I said, Mr. Johnson, he articulated himself well. But did it come out as genuine? I'm not sure. To me, it kind of came out as rehearsed. You know, and oh boy, Mr. Larry, I just think he was making a statement just so the judge would probably have, some kind of leniency, but then he didn't articulate himself well. Did it come across as him being genuine? Not to me. And I didn't hear the family's impact statements, victim impact statements. I just heard their statements. So I don't know if the family's impact statements had an impact on the judge's decision to sentence them to life or not. But I do know I just didn't feel like what they were saying was a heartfelt apology towards the family. And I just think the sentencing by the judge was already predetermined. She had already made up her mind that they were getting life without parole. You could see how she ran everything down. She recapped all the events that occurred that day. She recapped, all the incidents that they got into while they've been incarcerated. And she weighed those against, she weighed the pros and the cons of them being re-released on the streets. And to her, it just didn't make sense. She just didn't think that they could be rehabilitated to re-enter society as productive people. Now, with that being said, that was the judge's decision. That's not my opinion. That's not my assessment. That was strictly on the judge. So, hey, I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to run it down. I gave y'all both sides of, how it could have went down from my perspective. But I will say this about Mr. Johnston. Thinking that you could levy 20 years as a bargaining chip to that young lady's life was insane. That was laughable, dude. Like, you telling the judge you think, you doing 20 years that you could be rehabilitated after taking someone's life. And I'm not saying that he couldn't, but what I'm saying is, like, you stamped it. You put a time on it. Like, just give me 20 years. Like, you think this young lady's life was just worth 20 years when she was 20 years old? That's what I'm saying. Like, dude, to me, you tripped out. And to me, you just solidified the judge giving you that time, because how can you say, just let me go do 20 years, judge, and, I'm good. I'll be fully rehabilitated. I've taken accountability. You can say you've taken accountability all you want to, but dude, your actions while you were incarcerated haven't been saying that. You've been getting into fights, little incidents here and there. And not just talking about Mr. Johnson, but both of them. You've been getting into little fights and little, skirmishes and incidents here and there. You go into trial on a murder trial, dude, you're supposed to be keeping your nose clean. Not trying to get into any incidents. And I know shit comes your way, but, that's a part of knowing what you're facing, and you just got to be the bigger man in that situation. But, I get it. Hey, sometimes you got to defend yourself, and, the prosecution going to take it and spin it in their favor. So, not just saying that you was in there being hard-headed and, starting it or whatever, but you got to take accountability for it, man. And for Mr. Johnston to sit up there and say, hey, if you give me 20 years, I'll come out and be a productive part of society. I just thought that was a turnoff, man. I thought that was a slap in the face, really, and I think the judge probably took it that way too. But like I said, man, we're going to stay consistent on this content thing. Y'all let me know what y'all think about the comments. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments about the judge's decision. Once again, say, man, this your boy Derek the Mule for Spinning the Block Media, and I'm out.